Hey, what's up, guys? Tukey here, back again with another episode of my Cincinnati Reds Draft a Glory Franchise Mode series right here on MLB The Show 18. We're going to be saying 19 sooner rather than later. We are currently dealing with the aftermath of our best season yet, but as a result, our biggest disappointment as we fell short against the New York Mets in the playoffs. They went on, of course, to be one win away from the World Series. In this episode, we have to re-sign a couple of major pieces to the team, but for the most part, we're hoping that things start to come together in terms of the starting pitching additions. In general, pitching might be where we fell short, but we know the cavalry is arriving. I mean, Clyde Martin's going to be a major leaguer this year. You have someone else like Pedro Rodriguez, Eric Valencia, who was recently drafted, Daniel Stapleton. It does seem like a matter of time before we are truly saying, like, okay, this year it's World Series or bust. This year it was nice for us to finally get to the playoffs, and to win the division title in the process was, the cherry on top. But we need to make sure that that wasn't a one-season fluke, and I'm also looking at Archie May in particular. Jeffrey Pearson as well brought up the fact that May is going to have a revenge MVP season. He needs to. There's a lot of pressure on him to prove that it is not just a one-season fluke. So there is that. Zdeno Chara as well, getting to the other comments. Clearly the real Zdeno Chara. As far as that lineup is concerned, I'm not going to be against trying that. We could see how it goes down. Winning an MLB The Show is nearly impossible. That's the point of the challenge, though, isn't it? That's the point of the challenge, though, isn't it? I feel like Will Vincent deserves the Wild Thing haircut. You are not wrong. We might do that for the hell of it. And aside from that, it was just in general more discussion on kind of what happened and where things went wrong for us. So we're going to be able to jump straight into this. I do want to handle, well, in fairness, I do need to set up the roster a little bit, but I do want to handle some of these contracts first. Before we worry about salary arbitration, because there might be some people based off the money situation that we have to let walk to free agency. So let's handle everything else first. Steve Carrasco, we're going to go a one-year deal for him. He expects to be the ace. He is the ace. And we'll sign him up to the 1.7. That's fine. Sign him up for this season. Chris Velez, 2 years at about $800K, which is robbery and a half. Hopefully he's not too upset about getting shortchanged to that extent. Let's go 2 years at $750 for Mr. Trevino. Josh Rincon, not sure what the catching situation's going to be, as we have 3 MLB caliber catchers on this roster. So it's going to be kind of interesting to see how that all plays out. Clyde Martin, 3 years at 1.4. That's a good bit of business for us. Cervantes will go 3 years at $600. We'll pay him a little bit more. He should be potentially in the bullpen this season. He might not be, actually. I shouldn't say should be. He could be in the bullpen this year. Chad Padilla, Nicholas Lawson. Nicholas Lawson, someone who I probably shouldn't have picked. I believe he was a high up there pick, was he not? I can't remember at this point. We've drafted so many players, but nice to have him approaching being MLB already. We'll pay him $800K for the next 3 seasons. Alexis Cabrera, no guarantee where you're going to be. Again, there might be a decent amount of changes to the lineup this upcoming season. It really does depend on how everything plays out, where these guys are in their development, what kind of development we continue to see throughout the offseason. It's going to be interesting, though, to see how the lineup plays out. Edwin Velasquez is indeed ours. I'm having to double check because I didn't do the roster clear out like I normally do. So I think for the most part, I just want to make sure I don't accidentally sign somebody who I shouldn't. Like someone like Zach Green is a roster fill out essentially. So we'll see what happens there with the big money offers before we get into sending contracts to the likes of Joe Quinlan. The Angels sign an 88 rated player. So not a whole lot of movement there from some of the top guys. Money-wise, though, we should be okay. At the very least, to sign someone like Joe Quinlan. So we'll give him, I don't even know if we have to give him the player option to get him to sign. Let's go for $26 million over 3 years, trying to get a little bit of a discount on him. We'll see if he accepts that. Marlin, I'm still not sure if we're bringing back. Winston Medina, we are obviously bringing back. We'll go 3 years at 2.8. Man, that is cheaper than what I remember it potentially being. We'll just sign him to that, and hopefully that goes through. Norman Garner had a strong regular season. He fell apart in the postseason. He wants to be a closer, but that hasn't prevented someone like Bruce Boyle from still being effective, even though he's unhappy about his role. We're going to bring him back, but it's a little bit of a risk. Like I said, regular season, he was strong. In the playoffs, he absolutely fell apart. So we need a more consistent performance from him. Lincoln Post and Eduardo Herrera are the only other ones. So, I guess we'll look to bring everybody back. We should be able to afford to do so. Not really going to look for a discount for Post. And for Eduardo Herrera, who has been our long reliever for quite a while now, that's a role that he still might have in this upcoming season. We'll see what happens. Marlon, we got the money to bring him back. I was tempted to let him go, but it's at least worth it to me to see what the team is. I'd rather keep him and potentially trade him for nothing than lose him right now. I know he wants to be a star player. We'll see how the team works out, right? I think I'd rather keep him than get the extra draft picks for him that we could get if we let him go. So there is a chance he ends up getting traded for nothing. Time will tell. Let's move forward another day, as we do have a new third base coach. Mets signed a 90 overall guy, as if you needed the help, you jerks. And as far as the tender contracts, we have until December 2nd. So I do want to clear out the roster a little bit more. Agustin Silva we'll look to bring back as well. He just continues to be a half-decent AAA option to try and make that team a little bit better than they normally are. Scott Clausen is obviously ours. I'll just go through and sign the guys that I know happen to be ours. Or, I'll be back in a second. Why not? We'll jump cut it. All right, so I went through, offered everybody a contract just for the sake of time, right? So just to save that step. Also went through and made sure to release the players who do not actually belong to us. That way, too, we also get a clearer look at who needs to be protected in the Rule 5, which, to be honest, I'm not overly concerned about anybody there. I mean, aside from Richie Burnett, which we should have space on the 40-man, so we'll go ahead. And no, we do not. So who is on the 40-man right now that shouldn't be? Dan Williams will remove. I'm not too concerned about him, especially with the outfield depth that we have. Agustin Silva can also be removed. Josh Stowers as well. If we end up losing him, that is what it is. And Eduardo Herrera, our long reliever, because odds are someone will be ready to replace him. So that's all we need to do for now. There are others there that could certainly be removed, and let's be honest, probably will be. So Williams, Marte as a starting pitcher. I think we're good. I'm not really afraid of losing anybody there, and if we do, it's nobody major. So that's fine. Now we just have to sit back and wait and see who ends up accepting offers. Hopefully more people. Well, more people the better. Still no answer from Quinlan. We have a grand total of 12 days before we need to be overly concerned. 99 for Enmil Reyes. Jesus. And we do lose Dan Williams. Miami claims Williams off of waivers. So that's a little bit unfortunate, but there's nothing we really could have done. It was worth it. Okay, if some of you could start accepting offers, that would be great. I'm starting to get a little bit nervous now. Just a tiny bit. Adrian Haig ends up signing. Okay, really? We've had one player accept an offer out of that group. Really? Holy hell. Okay, well, let's renegotiate then, and I guess we won't be saving that much money, will we? I'm not going to give him the player option. Oh my god, wow, the cash flow though. Now that is factoring in every other offer that is out already, I do believe. We better hope so. So we'll offer, let's just go to max value. There we go. Let's see, it chips down right about there. So 9.9 a year over the next 3 years. Marlon, we'll see what we can do for you, buddy. Let's go 3 years again. Wants to be a star, which isn't going to happen, but we'll see what we can do. And again, we'll just offer him the max interest contract that we can, 5.7. Norman Garner, same thing. We'll still try to save some money, but not a ton in terms of utilizing player options. So again, whatever the max interest contract is for you, there we go, 3.8. Napoleon Gillis, because you're being difficult as well. We'll try to save where we can. It's going to be... There's a little bit of a difference between those two from what I can tell. So, $2.5 million per. Lincoln Post. I mean, buddy, you don't really have much room for negotiation here, and I wouldn't be surprised if you're someone who just gets shipped off roster sooner rather than later. But $2 million a year for you, and Eduardo Herrera, for the love of God. People need to start accepting these offers. Let's make this happen. 1.2. So let's move a little bit forward. And this is... Okay, so we've had one more person accept an offer. And we still have Velez and Miles. So let's go ahead and offer them a tiny bit more just to try and push these deals through. So Velez is already on a max interest contract, so that's pretty disappointing. Again, we have until the 23rd, the 20th to sort out the 40-man, which again, I know we have 2 spots still. I'm not concerned about losing anybody. Josh Marte, if I'm not mistaken, is C potential. Yeah, so we're not losing anybody great. So Quinlan, Gillis, Post, and Herrera still there, and we're still waiting for an answer from Chris Velez. So again, that's fine. Velez has signed. Joe Quinlan is being a tad bit problematic, considering the money situation is also now a tad bit problematic. Right. Technically, we're going to be in negative cash flow. So let's just go to yield franchise budget. I can't imagine that I'm going to do anything Diamond Dynasty wise for the rest of this. You know, let's just bump that up right there. You guys said that was okay and that it wasn't considered cheating previously. So yeah, let's just go ahead and do that. We have new financial backing from rich owners. That's clearly what's happening. Does it not go through immediately? Does it have to wait a day? Oh God. Oh God. Here, let me sim another day. Do I have to back out of the mode? It is the next time you load it up, isn't it? All right. So, give me a second. We'll save and back out of this, and we'll see if we can get it to go through. All right. So the bad news is it still hasn't gone through, which might complicate things that we can do here. Even if I withdraw offers, it's still looking a little bit rough. So, yeah, considering we only have one extra day beyond this, I'm going to have to look at trading somebody for nothing. So that is something I was hoping to avoid. But we have to figure out exactly who we want to get rid of here. And one of the obvious choices would be a catcher. Granted, there's not a ton of money tied up there, but let's be honest, we're probably going to have to get rid of somebody. Otherwise, it's just, you know, they sit there and do nothing. So, in terms of the best bat and the most well-rounded player, I mean, Josh Rincon is the best defensively, but the bat's a bit down. Henry Shipman will probably be our catcher again this season. Marlon's not even making that much, but when you have Graham Edwards on his deal, Quinlan still hasn't signed, Brian Lopez is getting paid an arm and a leg, Josh Stowers is making a ton, so let's see if we can get rid of old Josh, and Eduardo Carrillo might be on the way out as well. But yeah, I think Josh Stowers would be the guy that we want to get rid of. So let's see if we can find somebody. He's a bit too good, to be honest. Ben Miles. Will you take it, Baltimore? Yes, you will. So Josh Stowers has been traded to free up a little bit of fundage. Of course, he was down in AAA anyway, so it's not a major loss from the main team perspective. But yeah, Josh is on the way out. And let's hope to God we can get Joe Quinlan to sign here. That would be great. I mean, he's already at the max want. He doesn't want, well then again, the 4 years, it would drop it down. So let's bump, again, we'd still be in the negative cash flow for him, huh? That's not good. We cannot afford, or I think I called him Josh for a second. We can't afford to lose Joe Quinlan. And the money didn't go through. So yeah, we're going to be forced here to make other moves. I think Eduardo Carrillo is the obvious one. I mean, obviously from a defensive standpoint, the speed standpoint is ridiculous, but he's 33. He's going to regress sooner rather than later. And to be honest, Brian Lopez might be gone. I mean, we have Archie May. We have either Glenn Huff or Bryant Kay. Hell, Nicholas Lawson could play, although he's a terrible outfielder. Jesus. But the thought was maybe moving Bobby Bloom to the outfield full-time. Marlin might have to go. I really don't want to lose him, but Marlin might have to go. Or we let go of Henry Shipman, which, I mean, we can't. That average is too strong. At the very least, Carrillo has to go. In terms of there being anybody else who's still slightly overpaid, let's double check. Do we have anybody who's getting paid way more than they should? Not really. Just money-wise, we're in a tight spot. That's all we know. So, Eduardo Carrillo, where can we send you for absolutely nothing? Looking for someone who's terrible. San Diego will take on Rich Cortez for the season. Eduardo Carrillo is also gone, so some changes to the outfield as we are desperate to try and sign Joe Quinlan. Absolutely desperate. So we'll go up to the 3 years. We have to give him the player option. And money-wise, it's getting real close. There we go. So we need to hope that he accepts that. We will offer arbitration. I don't even know what we're going to do with Napoleon Gillis. I have no idea. Although it appears now as though the cash flow is at a more positive note all of a sudden. What the hell? I don't even know. I don't care. Maybe the thing finally went through as it's supposed to. So that's good. As far as Napoleon Gillis is concerned, again, we were offering 2.5. We will go with that player option. Let's go with that, 2.5. We'll give him the player option as well, just to try and get a deal done. Lincoln Post as well. Desperate just to get a deal done. Not so much with him. He might even be down in AAA, but I'd rather have him as an option before potentially getting rid of him. That is the issue. So, and what can we do here with Herrera? There you go. Please, fellas, for the love of God, sign these contracts. I'm begging you. Nobody's signed. We have offered Quinlan. I do believe we've qualified Quinlan. We should be okay otherwise. Right. So, for Quinlan here, ideal salary is 9.1. That is going to be my offer. And we'll do this just to be safe. Why not? We'll do everything that we can to try and keep these guys. Gillis would technically, again, be at a 2.5. Didn't think we'd run into this much trouble in terms of negotiating, yet here we are. We'll try to go for a 1.9 for Lincoln Post. That works. And Eduardo, you're being ridiculous. But still, we'll try to get this to work out for us. So let's go ahead and go with that deal there. And hopefully, we don't lose anybody. So we'll sim forward a day. Still nothing on that front. Ridiculous. Oh, that's right, it was arbitration. I was confusing it with the first, what we ended the last episode with. As finally, Joe Quinlan has accepted. It's a Christmas miracle. But there you go. Quinlan is on roster. Kevin Newman to the Giants. And we'll just keep moving forward here. Just waiting for Gillis and Herrera now. We should be okay. We should be fine. Everyone's accepted. Beautiful. So that took much longer than I would have hoped. We got that done. We're off to the Rule 5, where again, the rules remain the same. We are allowed one pitching prospect and one position player. We'll see if there's actually anybody that we can get. Of course, we should have open spots. We do have open spots on the 40-man as well, so that's going to come into play here. And I don't believe we lost anybody else. So let's take a look. Shout out to Chuck Kidd. Don't recommend that. In terms of catchers, there's really nobody. Yeah, there's nobody there. In terms of first baseman, Rich McCauley. Rich McCauley. Looking pretty good. 23B and a 74. How we'd get him onto the everyday roster, I don't know. But 23B and a 74 is looking pretty good. 25A and a 71, Freddie McGee. There might be an outside chance of late development for him. I think I'd prefer to take McCauley, though. At third, nobody great. At short, nobody great. And in the outfield, nobody there. Nobody at all. What about in center? Tim Ramirez, probably not. And in right, Cleveland Herberts, that's about it. So the best option is that first baseman. Pitching-wise, is there somebody better? There is Omar Calderon, who could certainly help, even if he's the long reliever this season. Maybe give Martin one more season down in AAA. Even better is Joseph Dye in terms of age. Calderon, decent stamina, high velocity. Everything else just kind of okay. Dye, obviously, the hits, Ks, and walks are concerning. He is probably, like I said, though, the best option in terms of age overall and potential. Is there anybody else who wants to make a claim for being the selection here? And the answer appears to be no. At least in terms of the age group. Sean Chavez, probably not. And Marshall Riggs, probably not. So it comes down to Joseph Dye or Calderon. Again, probably Dye just for the room that he has to improve. In terms of relievers, nothing that can match it, and we don't even really need the help. So our first pick here, it's out of necessity. First and foremost, Joseph Dye will be the selection. So we will go ahead and add him to the big list of players who actually belong to us. And if that first baseman is there, he is. Richie McCauley will also be picked up. No guarantees that he stays on the roster at all. But again, without knowing what this roster is going to look like, it's at least worth picking him up to have him be an option. Maybe Marlon Pugh ends up on the way out. Strong possibility. Nolan Gorman, I read that as Norman Garner somehow. But yeah, with everything that could change here, I mean, we've already seen some changes, as well as Steven Ryder gets traded to Philly for Nolan Jones. What a trade. 2 former Reds involved in a deal. So there you go. A look at what those two are looking like as they're in their early 30s. That is one hell of a trade. Very intrigued to see what this roster looks like. Joseph Dye has a renewable deal. Sure. Well, actually, in fairness, our cash flow right now is back into the knots. So that's going to be interesting to see if that can even go through. But let's sim to spring training. And, yeah, Joseph Dye actually might end up becoming a free agent there. So we'll see what happens. I'll set up this roster. I'll give you a look at what we're looking like for this season. Again, there might be trades on the way. All right, so that took a little bit longer than expected, and that is because there was a lot that had to be done. We have let go of a lot of players, particularly starting pitchers, where we just had way too much clutter. I'll get to that in a moment, though. Or you know what? Screw it. Let's get to it now. I'll show you everything that has happened, as long as it is all still listed. So, case in point, we released some longtime prospects like Sanchez, Mendel, Marte, Parra, Miranda. We acquired for Eduardo Herrera and then immediately let him go because it was easier to release him than Eduardo Herrera. So quite a bit has changed. No major players are gone. Here is the rotation for this season, although I'm not entirely sure how I want to set things up, but I think Carrasco, Bailey, and Manzanillo, who was great last year, deserve to start as the front three with Medina and Trevino. Joseph Dye is going to be the long reliever to start, but if someone slips up, he'll get the opportunity. The bullpen is absolutely stacked. Gillis, Velez, Lincoln Post, Boyle, Garner, and Vincent. A good mix of lefties and righties as opposed to the rotation, which only has one lefty. So there is that. AAA, a bullpen, features Clyde Martin and Eric Valencia at the top of the list. Russell Zarate, you'll notice, is also up there as a top prospect. AA was where we really needed to clear out some players to make room for the likes of Orlando Rosas and Daniel Stapleton. So, again, in terms of prospects coming up, things are looking pretty good for us. With Clyde Martin, the one thing I'm worried about is that he wants to be in the rotation, so are we stunting his development by giving him one more season? He's certainly not happy about it, but perhaps that'll change. I think the concern for him, though, too, 59 stamina, he's just not going to be able to be that dominant starting pitcher that we need him, or at least want him to be. We look at the lineup. This is the more relevant lineup. Quinlan, Lopez, Bloom, Edwards, Pugh, May, Shipman, and Huff are the main features on this team right now. There is maneuverability. right now as it stands, Quinlan, Lopez, Bloom, Edwards, Pugh all want to be star players. Right now, Quinlan, Bloom, and Edwards are in those spots. Maneuverability this season in that Bryant Kay could take over for Huff at center field. Hell, we could move Bobby Bloom to the outfield, have Jimenez at third, and move Pugh to first. There's a lot we can do. But having Vasquez, I think I said Jimenez move over. Vasquez is who we would move into that starting lineup, although Jimenez isn't that bad. Josh Rincon is going to be the backup catcher behind Shipman this season for the main reason that Martin Abreu is younger and maybe he'll benefit a little bit more from being down in AAA for a season. Not sure exactly what that lineup's going to be. I'm going to wait until it prompts me to just auto-assign it. So Richie McCauley on the bench. Overall, the team's looking pretty strong still. Like I said, though, in terms of seeing how things go along, making changes as that happens, rewarding those who are actually playing well, it should be another strong year for us. Standings-wise, we are the third rated team, first in speed, second in contact, ninth in pitching finally, 22nd in defense, 20th in power. Actually, in fairness, there are two other teams in the top 10 alongside us, so it's not the easiest division we've ever been in. In terms of top prospects, you've already seen them, but Clyde Martin is there, Tom Lau is in AAA this season, Orlando Rosas is there, Henry Lewis is in AAA this season. I think we have at least one more. I haven't looked at this list. Eric Valencia is there at 39. So we're looking pretty damn good, I have to admit. Let's go ahead and move forward. We should still be able to get to the draft today. It might be a little bit of a longer episode, but we'll see what happens. How will this team do? I do not know, but I'm eager to find out. It's with that pressure now of us needing to do well, it's that much more stressful waiting to see how a season is going to go for us. So it hasn't exactly been a banner season for your Cincinnati Reds. 29 wins, 30 losses on the season. We got off to a miserable, absolutely miserable start. Finally picking up wins against St. Louis. But yeah, you can see how bad that opening month of April was. We started to turn things around a little bit more consistently throughout May, so we're kind of lucky to be just one game back of 500. We still have a couple of games to stim here before the draft. I do want to get to the draft and through the draft. As we do get back up to 500, we'll have one more game here and we lose it. So 30-31 as of the draft. Not exactly where we wanted to be. We'll take a look at all the stats and everything else. As you can see, we have the second to last pick, the penultimate pick of the first round. So we'll see what we can do with it. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to look at these stats and to see what exactly has been happening. So the first player of interest here in terms of scouting, I didn't do anything in particular, which is kind of general scouting, looking for any player regardless of where they play. Jose Cardenas, who looks tremendous. 20 years old, he's going to be ready next year, and I can see why. So yeah, in terms of someone to look at, Cardenas looking pretty damn good. We also have Tom Haywood, the outfielder, same age, but is 4 years away. Certainly not as good. High injury risk as well. And that's it for the 80 potentials, so I think it's fairly straightforward. Cardenas is the guy. Daniel Diaz is there. Honestly, not looking that bad either. I think Cardenas is probably too good to pass up on, but Daniel Diaz is okay. Chet Hines as well, 4 years away at 18 years old. Very well-rounded. Okay, so I mean, we have some decent options. I'd still say Cardenas is the top option, but Diaz and Hines both look pretty solid. And then that brings us down to some of the 70 potential. So I'm going to be, wow, there's not many people in this draft, apparently. We're going to go for Jose Cardenas, and hopefully Diaz or Hines is still available. And we do have an extra pick in the competitive balance round, so that works. So is it going to be Hines as an outfielder, Diaz as a pitcher? Hines is fairly well-rounded. Obviously, it's that bit to the power game that really intrigues me. And then Diaz is fairly well-rounded outside of the low Ks per 9. That's a tough pick. I'm honest. I mean, we have some decent options coming up for outfielders already, but I think Hines is more well-rounded. Diaz, I don't know if he'll be the make-or-break guy, but he could be a strong addition, especially as a lefty, to the rotation. I feel like Hines... I'm going to go for Hines. I should probably take Diaz, but I am going to go for Hines on that one. Diaz has not been picked? No way. Wow, we're going to end up with all three of them. That is as good of a draft as I think we could have hoped for. Even if they're not the best players based off of what we knew there, that worked out very well for us. So in terms of info, hello. Okay, we actually do have quite a few players that we still have info on. Okay, maybe not quite a few, but we got a decent amount. So Ray Woodall, the closer, is pretty damn strong. Pretty damn strong indeed. That low velocity rating is looking pretty good, though. And then there's also Guillermo Cairo. Woodall is projected to be ready next year. Cairo's looking pretty good, but the fact that he's not going to be ready next year is intriguing. I think it's going to be Woodall. Just the fact that he's ready to go next year, and the grades look pretty strong. So, yeah, this is the fastest we've ever gone through a draft, but because we're picking so late into the draft, the choices are fairly straightforward and obvious. And Guillermo Cairo is still on the board to us, so we'll end up with him as well. Otherwise, it's just shot in the dark, hope for the best with these picks. It didn't look like there were that many players in this draft, but here we go, regardless. In terms of high potentials, there's nobody left, really. There are some of these 70 rateds, or 70 potentials. Of course, we can't trust that, but the ETAs are solid between Perez, Batista, and Henry Amaya. Of course, it's pointless to sit here and look at what the grades are. None of that's accurate, but two relievers and a position player. Let's take a risk on Michael Batista, and we'll see if that works out, and hopefully one of those two relievers are still there. They are not, though. I see them both on the board. So in terms of a lower ETA, there's nobody, so we'll look at the younger players. The youngest player is this catcher, Martin Serrano, or Martin Serrano, probably. And then there's the two 20-year-olds, Johnny Hanks and Johan Santana, which, I mean, if he was a duplicate, that would be amazing. I'm going to go for Serrano, though. And that is, without a doubt, the fastest we've ever made it through a draft. We'll end the episode by looking at the draft picks. For now, let's go over to what this team has been. And actually, in fairness, we'll start 5.5 games back of the Cubs, so they're not exactly killing it. We're the second-rated team now, though. We should be better than this. We haven't dealt with any injury concerns. Pitching-wise, Carrasco not exactly killing it, although, again, it'll be worth taking a look. As you already would have seen, we have some league leaders, which makes it even worse that we're struggling like we are. So, in terms of, I should look at league leaders, but let's look at team rankings here, I suppose. So batting average right now, we're down in 14th. You'd expect a little bit better, I would suppose. In terms of, well, total hits doesn't matter as much. Second in the league in doubles. In terms of our power game, still a little bit weak, 23rd. Sole possession of 23rd. First in stolen bases by a very large margin, which is not surprising at all. We've also drawn the most walks, so the fact that we're a game under 500 is absolutely insane to me. We're somewhat up there in terms of strikeouts. Slugging percentage, currently 16th. That's not terrible. We have the highest on-base percentage in the league, yet we're under 500. It's crazy. I think that really just is a sign of it was a terrible, terrible start for us, and that we're starting to turn things around. Team fielding percentage is a little bit down there at a 986. Team ERA, an 11th, which isn't completely horrible. Blown saves on the season. Where are we at this point? 13 already, so that's a little bit rough. Very, very odd. But in terms of league leaders, in the NL at least, for batting average, anything over 300 is solid. Marlin currently there at a 307, so keep that in mind. Anything over 300, of course, is normally great, but still, just to see what the standard is around the league. Marlin's up there for hits as well. Kind of glad we kept him. League leader in doubles, Graham Edwards and Glenn Huff both up there. In triples, you have Graham Edwards up there still. And Marlin right now leading the NL and the MLB in general in home runs. He's up to a 93 overall right now. Jesus Christ. We'll look at that in full in just a moment. He's also up there in RBIs. Oh my God. You want to talk about an MVP season, Marlon Pugh right now, guys. Holy hell. Edwards was also there for RBIs. Stolen bases, Edwards, Lopez, Huff, and Quinlan all up there. What I wanted to take a look at was on-base percentage. So there's only 2 players above a 400. Huff is nearly there. Marlin also there as well. So the higher up into the 300s, obviously the better. Slugging percentage right now, Marlin up there as well. So just to get you a look around the NL for kind of what the standard is, Will Vincent with 18 saves on the year. Right now for ERA, you have 2 players who are dominating under a 2. So again, anything under a 3 right now is looking great. And obviously Joe Bailey and Winston Medina are both up there. I think right now we're just struggling from a very poor start. I think that's really all we can say. Let's get a look, though, at everything in full, finally. So, rotation-wise, again, Carrasco, not exactly killing at the start of the year. 4-3, a 4.74 ERA. I know some people are going to be like, oh, all the extra stats and everything. I don't really feel like doing it this episode unless there's a very interesting player. But we would have seen Joe Bailey up there. He's having a great season. Manzanillo's been okay. Not phenomenal, but he's been pretty good. Winston Medina is killing it, and Trevino's also been just kind of okay. So again, Bailey and Medina killing it. Carrasco and Manzanillo, pretty damn good. Carrasco and Trevino, they've been okay. Joseph Dye, I don't know if he's exactly earned the call up to be in the starting rotation. Obviously, he's not happy with his role, but with those numbers, I don't know if he necessarily should get the call up. Bullpen-wise, Napoleon Gillis has been okay. Nothing spectacular. Chris Velez has been spectacular. Lincoln Post, same thing. Okay at best. Norman Garner has been brutal. Him getting roughed up in the playoffs has messed him up big time. Bruce Boyle has been pretty damn good, and Will Vincent as well. So, yeah, the big issue here is Norman Garner is broken. Of course, relief-wise as well. In fairness, why don't they have a long reliever? Oh, injuries. Yeah, injuries have been a problem throughout the minor leagues. Lineup-wise, just to take a look, Joe Quinlan, 5 home runs, 18 RBIs, a 244 average with a 343 on base. So should he still be the leadoff man? Probably not with his struggles, but again, between the top 5, all of them expect to be stars, and we only have 3 star spots, 1, 3, and 4 in the lineup. So you got to make that tough call. Brian Lopez still doing well. 6 home runs, 28 RBIs, a 274 average. He's down to a legitimate 83, by the way. He has declined big time. He still expects to play in one of those top 3 roles. He's not, but he's still doing all right. But yeah, the regression for Brian Lopez is real. But a 274 average, 361 on base. He's done pretty well this season. Bobby Bloom was off to a horrific start. That's one of the main reasons we struggled. He was horrific at the start of the year. Only 5 home runs, 20 RBIs, and a 254 average. He's still not doing all that well. So if you want to look at how we have some people, leading the way, but we're still struggling and under 500, Bobby Bloom, same thing. Since the playoffs started against the Mets, he has been brutal. He's been on a terrible run of form. Graham Edwards, 8 home runs, 40 RBIs, and a 271 average, just lavishing in the role of being a star player as he should. But again, 8 home runs, 40 RBIs, a 271 average, 366 on base for him. And then there's Marlin, who is, again, leading the way in terms of an MVP candidate right now. The big thing, though, is do we move him up in the lineup or do we just leave him because he's doing so well where he is? But he's an 89, playing like a 93, which is insane. I don't even know how he has that high of a rating, I guess. I mean, just with the low-ish fielding stats. But 19 home runs, he's already topped last year's total. 61 RBIs, already topped last year's total. 307 average, 393 on base, 588 slugging. He is a beast this season. And Archie May, to his credit, still doing well. Legitimate 83, but up to 9 home runs, 24 RBIs. Not exactly at last year's pace where he was robbed of an MVP season, but he's doing well. I think that's more of what we expected from him. Henry Shipman, 277 average, not much in the way of RBIs, which is shocking when you see who's in front of him and some of the on-base averages there, or just batting average in general. So Shipman, a little bit disappointing, I got to admit. But just from an RBI perspective. Then you have Glenn Huff, 26 RBIs, 296 average on the year. Glenn doing quite well, and I can't imagine Bryant K would have been looking any better. We'll take a look here. Richie McCauley, only 35 at-bats on the year, but he has done quite well. We'll give him that. Bryant K, limited at-bats. He's been all right. Francisco Jimenez still doing quite well in limited appearances. Josh Rincon, not too bad. Almost has more RBIs than Shipman in nearly 100 less at-bats. And Ramon Vasquez, in fairness, only 65 at-bats, despite him being the DH when we play against AL teams. He's really struggled in those in terms of averages. When he hits the ball, it goes well. So yet again, we still find ourselves with that familiar question of what the hell to do in terms of personnel, in terms of setup and positioning, in rotation, and with the lineup. So it'll be interesting to see what happens the rest of the way. But right now, we're walking on that fine line of clearly we should be better. Let's hope that continues to improve, as Marlin leading the way, the second most voted upon player for the NL. Joe Adell's ahead of him, which is insulting. Absolutely insulting. But we'll see what happens. In the next episode, we go through the rest of the season. I want your suggestions and opinions on what we should do with the lineup and with the rotation. Should someone get into the lineup a little bit more regularly? Should someone be bumped up to that starting rotation? What should we look to do to ensure that we are back in the playoffs? So we're not off to a flying start. We have some players who are struggling a little bit, but at the end of the day, we're only one game under 500, 5.5 back at the Cubs. There's more than enough time to turn this season around and get us back up to where we should be. Thank you for watching and supporting this series. I will see you guys in the next one. Until then, have a good one. Goodbye.